You are listening to In Artversation, a discussion program as part of Warin Lab Contemporary Podcast, a podcast that explores art and sustainability. I am Sukontip Nakasem and I'm your host. In today's episode, let's think about how the art industry will look like in 2022 after a turbulent 2 years of COVID-19. In general, the art industry as we know it had come to a halt. Most art fairs were cancelled, galleries had to close for a long period of time, a lot of exhibitions were postponed. Having said that, we also came to embrace the power of digital realm. We saw the growth of online content, whether it be web biennale, or live viewing room, or even the hype of NFTs. All in all, the past 2 years have given us, first of all, a pause from a hectic pace. It gave us food for thoughts on how we do things. I thought it would be interesting to find out from respectable figures in the Southeast Asian art scene and hear their takes on trends and possibilities that await us in 2022. I talked to Richard Ko, an owner of Richard Ko Fine Art, who managed 3 art spaces in 3 different cities in Southeast Asia, in Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, and Bangkok. So, Richard, the previous years have been quite a challenging year for the art industry. With the global pandemic came travel restrictions and cancellation of events. How do you think 2022 will look like?
It will probably remain the same for Southeast Asia. It's the same players, but then on the other hand, you have a new group of people coming in, much younger, and has no connection in many ways with the system that we've had, or shall I say, the art scene that we've had in Southeast Asia. So it will be very different in depending on which angle you're looking at for Southeast Asia anyway, I think.
When you talk about new group of people coming in, do you mean the gallery side or the collecting side?
In general, we don't have that many young people in the collecting side or even the gallery side. It's only in the last 2 or 3, less than 5 years that we have new people coming in, right? So, and now with the COVID and everything, and you do see across the board in Southeast Asia, there are quite a number of new people coming in, new people who have never collected before, or who have never been in the art scene before. They are collecting and they are opening spaces and they are doing things that are totally different from what has been happening, for a while. So I think that is interesting. So I wouldn't say changes are drastic or different in a way, because it's very natural for things to evolve. We know how it's been for the last, even before the COVID, it was like, this cannot go on forever, right? We've always asked ourselves, because it's the same thing over and over and over again. So something has to change, and I think it's interesting to see the changes in that sense.
So we hear about the possibilities of an evolution of the art industry, that will see the influx of new people, younger people, and also new ways that the business goes about doing things. Let's hear from another well-informed perspective. We have with us Nadia Wang, founder and editor of Art and Market, which is a multimedia platform that presents the content of Southeast Asian art.
Every day throws up new challenges, and just when we thought that the coronavirus pandemic was kind of like, sort of settling down, now we surge in numbers, right? Certainly in Singapore, we have like 13,000 cases, I think, last weekend. So it's really unpredictable. But we also just finished Singapore Art Week, and I think that was a success. People did go out. There were such long queues at Tanjong Pagar Distripark, which is the new hub for art in Singapore. So I think, one thing that will not change is people's yearning to experience art, and not just through the screen, but in person. So that's something that I think is really encouraging from the consumer side. And I think from the producer side, all of us have become really adept at meeting new challenges, because I think that's just been how it has gone. So in terms of what it will look like, I think there will be a return to how things were, in terms of like having more in-person events, activity openings, even art fairs. We've certainly seen that happening already. So I think that's going to continue. And I think people are now starting to be much more circumspect in appreciating that that's just the new normal. I think this new normal is already, the normal.
It's good to hear the prediction that the sentiment of seeing art in person remains strong and people yearning to be in the art venue. Nadia, as your media covers the whole of Southeast Asia, you do have a bird's eye view of what is going on in the region. Do you see any trends that are likely to happen in 2022?
So some trends that we're seeing are, for one, that there are many more artist collectives, or much more of a spotlight on artist collectives. I think this certainly has to do with, the upcoming Documenta 15, which is curated by Wang, because, that's curated based on, collectivity, resource building, on sharing. So I see that spirit running through the region, especially because, I think during the pandemic, we were all leaning on each other, right? We were reaching out, we were collaborating, we were much more open, I think, to working with people we hadn't worked with before, because it was just, the way forward. And I think on that note also, I'm seeing much more efforts in archiving. And not archiving for archiving's sake as well, but archiving in terms of wanting to share the resources that have been built up with others. So open access archiving. And I think one of the things that we might not have thought of as archiving is all the recording of digital events as well. That's a form of archiving, and that's, a way that we can look back at this period and think about what was going on at the time. And certainly for myself, and I know for you, Fawn, I mean, we watch these things, right? Even if we don't catch them live, we watch them afterwards. And they give us food for thought. It can give us comfort because it's something that we relate to, or it can educate us about things that we didn't think about. So that's another trend, the archiving. I think the third thing I've identified would be that there are many more artist-run spaces. So I think within the pandemic, because there was, I guess, more time on people's hands, there were less official happenings. So I saw many more artists organizing themselves and helping each other out to do events, or like simple sharing sessions, or even establishing like artist-run spaces to give other artists like a platform to show their work. So that's another one. And of course, I think we cannot escape the fact that there's so much more interest in NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. But what I thought was interesting in attending the many SAW Dialogues talks we had was that we had a speaker say that, NFTs is just a medium, which I thought was very refreshing. I mean, it sound, for a while, I think it sounded like, wow, it's so cool, but then it's also very mysterious. What does it mean? What can it do? And if we just think about it as, well, it's a medium. And, I think it strips away some of the mystery, and allows us to think of it as such, and to also realize that a medium doesn't mean it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It is just a medium. So I mean, for me, that has been it was like a click for me, like, oh, okay, if I think about it that way, I can approach it without feeling like, it's something that's very ungraspable. Because I think that's also part of why the hype is really like building up for it. I don't quite subscribe to the hype because I haven't yet, I think, seen any NFT works that really speak to me. So I'm waiting for that to happen. I'm totally open to it, waiting for it to happen.
Right. You talk about 4 trends: artist collective, digital archiving, artist-run spaces, and NFTs. What do you think are the influencers for these trends?
I think for NFTs, there are lots of influencers out there, but to me, they are not very much in the art world. They are more in the tech world. So I hesitate to say who they are because I'm not quite sure about that. But I do think, Rang Rupa as the curators of Documenta 15 is very influential. I feel like that is really putting the spotlight on Southeast Asia because they're from Indonesia, and are really bringing along with them other artist collectives who are doing, the same type of good work they are from the ground up. So that's really encouraging. I also think, not in terms of influencer, I guess, but in terms of events, the fact that Venice Biennale is taking place, the 59th edition is taking place from April this year. That's also really exciting. And I know that some people are trying to travel to Europe and, be at Documenta, be at like Venice Biennale. So, that's really nice because it seems like some semblance of normalcy there, like, a predictable event is happening. 2 of them are happening. So that's super exciting. And I know that art fairs are also still taking place. I mean, there have been delays still or cancellations. So for example, ArtSG this year was cancelled and it's going to take place for the first time, hopefully next year. And then of course, Art Basel Hong Kong was delayed, although they did say that that was predicted. So I think these events really help to, help everyone ride the wave and help everyone to feel like things are moving forward. So I would say in terms of I think of them as events being influencing, what's happening and not so much individuals or collectives.
What about you, Richard? You have fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the region. What trends do you see?
I think the trend, there is a very interesting trend. I think I see in the spaces. It's like there are more and more younger people coming into the scene, but they are not looking at the traditional art per se. I mean, they're all into NFT and the crypto art, that sort of stuff. And they're very comfortable with it. It is a very natural thing for this generation.
And you think this trend in Southeast Asia differ from the rest of the world?
No, I don't think. I just feel that I think Asia in general has a much younger population, and and they're more in tune to technology. In many ways, Asia is very online. They're very tuned into the technology. So it's just a progression.
So do you see any dramatic change this year?
In a strange way, this pandemic has actually, put you in a situation where you really have to think what is more important. I wouldn't say anything dramatic. I think it will still be there. Everybody will still be doing what they are doing. I guess how aggressive or how much they want to do it,
If we were to look at the whole art industry, which segment do you think will gain traction in 2022? Nadia?
So I was thinking about, I'm not sure quite which segment, but I was thinking about maybe thinking of experimentations with technology. If we move away from NFT, something else that's really interesting nowadays is artificial reality and virtual reality. So artificial reality is something that we can just use on our phone, and I think it happens very often now, right? Then VR is where you need like a headset and you are like immersed in this fictional reality. So I see much more of this in artists' works, much more interest to explore these ideas. I think it comes from wanting to escape our reality a bit because of the pandemic and its restrictions. So I see that to be, something that will gain traction. I'm not sure if that's a segment exactly, but I think that will gain traction. And then I think also that there are going to be a lot more galleries and auction houses like trying to figure out how more to engage with their audiences digitally. So I mean, we are all trying to like get back in real life, get back in the physical gallery, get back in the physical like auction room and things like that. But I think on everyone's mind is the idea that, okay, I've done this digital thing and I think it's the way forward. How do I balance the two? So digitally, we have been now used to things like online viewing rooms. We are so used to scrolling through things. We are also quite used to using social media. So I'm now wondering what next? How are we going to engage more with the audience in a way that feels genuine, in a way that feels valuable, in a way that feels like it's not second best to the physical, or a substitute for the physical. How will it complement? How will it enhance? So that's a segment that maybe not gaining traction so much as a segment for exploration. I think all of us are always looking at what others are doing, right? Like, oh, you know, what is this gallery doing? What's that auction house doing? So yeah, I'm gonna look forward to seeing what happens with that.
You talk about augmented reality, virtual reality, and the media that digitally engage the audience. I myself has been in the business for almost 2 decades, and I have seen with my own eyes that in the past 3-4 years, the industry landscape has dramatically changed. All of a sudden, the fast-paced technology that cater to Gen Z has arrived on our doorstep practically, and it is likely to become mainstream. Do you think this presents a barrier or obstacle for old galleries to stay relevant?
I mean, you know, like I feel it's an obstacle sometimes for me as well, because like sometimes, okay, for example, you know, Clubhouse happened, right? Like the Clubhouse rooms where people were chatting, or like recently I came across a project where they did everything on Telegram, which is another app. Or of course, there's like the use of TikTok. You know, there are some museums who use TikTok to create videos that help to bring in, like you said, the Gen Z users. So, you know, there are all these newfangled things to play around with. Sometimes I don't quite get it, but I'm always, you know, interested and sometimes amused, or, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, that's really cool. Like I want to try it for myself. So I think all of us are very adaptable, and it doesn't quite matter, I think, if we are older or younger, so long as we keep an open mind. And I think being in the art industry already, you know, kind of like that is already sort of like a criterion, if you will. So I think if the galleries can have stayed around for such a long time, I'm sure they're going to be able to adapt. And for me, it's just fun to kind of see how things take hold or don't take hold, because it's also about branding, right? So, you know, sometimes when people use TikTok, that seems fine, but then it also doesn't really gel with, for example, like an older gallery's like brand identity. So, you know, it doesn't really quite work. I think also that there are definitely people who still want that traditional experience. So there is no need to kind of woo them with like newfangled things. You know, there were lots of interesting exhibitions that were very experimental, that showed, for example, objects, or like lots of like AR or VR, or like, you know, just immersive. But then there were also these like rather more traditional types of exhibitions, which is just come look at paintings, look at a sculpture. And I know for a fact that many people found those quite soothing, because, you know, after you've had to like learn so much new technology or learn new ways to engage with art, it's sometimes just nice to go back to what is familiar. And I think, you know, even as we hurtle into like a new reality, we can still take comfort in what we know. There's no need to, you know, just discard everything that's come before.
So, familiarity and comfort of viewing the artwork in physical form continue to play a vital role in us as human beings to appreciate art with our body senses, not just virtually through the screen. So to me, the hybrid approach seems to be the name of the game. Considering where we are today, the big question is, which are the elements people in the art industry should embrace to ride the wave and be able to sustain?
The best way to describe it is, it's like everyone is in a maze, in a garden, in a maze, but can't seem to find their way out of the maze. I think one of the basic problems that we do have in Southeast Asia is, which is a little bit unhealthy at times, is everybody seems to think they're better than everybody else. You know, and I think this mindset needs to change, and also people need, like I said earlier, people need to understand there is something for everyone. You know, there are different sectors, different sections in the whole scene, in the market, or in the gallery, or, you know, in the collector base. There are different people in different section, and everyone is important. You know, everyone is part of the equation. So I think the so-called frontliners or the more visible people who are the spokespeople or the front, they or even organizations or whatever, they need to understand that the entire system cannot exist, based on what they dictate or what they say or what they perceive. There's something for everybody, and I think as once people understand the fact that it is a big section, and everyone has a place in it, then it will be able to sustain.
We hear that sustainability requires us to have a mindset of team players, looking at the industry as a pie large enough for everyone, and we have to embrace the newcomers. Nadia also echoes similar train of thoughts of open-mindedness and collaboration. Let's hear from her.
I was just on a panel with a few people in the industry talking about like collaboration. I think a couple of panels was on collaboration and intersectionality. And I think that's going to be the way forward, because we are now constantly thinking about how to expand our audiences. It's not just about art, but like, how does art intersect with fashion or food or design? And that's been something really interesting for us to look at. We run this series called A&M Salon, based solely on exploring intersections between art and other fields. And it's always fun to see how people are influenced by different fields to work in art, or by art to work in other fields. So definitely that, like an open-mindedness to intersections, open-mindedness to collaboration. One thing about collaboration is, I think because of how we've had to work. I mean, collaboration has always existed, obviously, but like digitally, I think people were feeling much more emboldened by it, because, you just have to like meet people on Zoom, and then you're like, okay, let's do something, right? Because what else is there to do? It's no longer like the hamster wheel of like, let's go to a fair A, B, C, D and have like all these shows, but what can we do together? Because there was also this real need to connect and to feel, like the human spirit, and to be like on the same boat as others. So I think collaboration will continue. And certainly from that, I would say that flexibility is going to be something that is important to embrace. And, all of us have done that. I think sometimes with some complaining, because it's like, oh, when is it going to end? When can I do things my way? But I think we've come to a point when we know that that is the way forward. And also to have plan B, but plan B with an eye to the future. I know that in the pandemic, like you said, of course, many galleries or like initiatives or events, they closed, they weren't able to function. But those who continue, they are the ones who have pivoted. They're the ones who have been open to new ideas. They've been the ones who, have been able to just maybe throw away the rule book for a little bit and just try something. And then sometimes when they've tried something, then everyone else, jumps on that bandwagon, learns from that. And then, we continue to invent that way. And then we egg each other on, we encourage each other, and we motivate each other to, to see what else can be done. So I think these are all very important elements that we can encourage among ourselves to have a successful 2022.
There you have it. Future forecast in 2022. I hope you enjoyed the episode. See you next time.